news networks, CNN and Fox News, saying some really ratchet things here about the Palestinian people, about Gaza, about the situation. And I want you to ask yourself, who got the last laugh? We're going to start with Jesse Waters first. Jesus Christ. This is probably one of the most cringe statements I've heard. I want you to listen to what he had to say about the Palestinians. Check this out.
But this population in Palestine is hostile. It's uneducated. It's even more radicalized than they were at the beginning of this. I mean, now they have no homes at all. They're even more hateful of the Israelis. And their birth rate is explosive. The average Palestinian woman has 5.5 babies. The average Israeli woman has only 2.5 babies. So demographically, they're a threat, not to mention the national security threat. There is no way you can have these two peoples living side by side.
Interesting.
But this population in Palestine is hostile. It's uneducated.
Doesn't that sound familiar? These people are hostile, uneducated. How can you call people uneducated after all the schools have been bombed? Gaza was a ghetto. Gaza had dirty water. Israel controlled the electricity. Israel would turn the electricity off whenever they felt like it. Wouldn't allow certain foods to come into Gaza. If you were sick, if you got cancer, for example, you would need to go to an Israeli hospital. Israel gets to decide whether or not you're allowed to get the treatment. For them to allow you to come out of the gate that they've closed you in. How smart does he expect everybody to be when Israel is controlling the resources? And now they've bombed most of the schools. Imagine saying something like this.
It's even more radicalized than they were at the beginning of this. I mean, now they have no homes at all. They're even...
Who got rid of the homes? Israel did. But he's not going to say that. Otherwise, he won't keep his gig on Fox News.
More hateful of the Israelis. And their birth rate is explosive. The average Palestinian woman has 5.5 babies.
I thought you were pro-life. If anything, you should be happy about their birth rate. Now you want them to have less children? What happened to pro-life?
The average Israeli woman has only 2.5 babies. So demographically, they're a threat.
So what he's saying is there's too many of them. He wants them to have less children because he wants the Israelis to be the largest population. I can't even believe he was able to say this. I really can't believe this. I can't believe he still has a job at Fox News, to be honest.
Not to mention the national security threat. There is no way you can have these two peoples living side by side.
This guy right here, Jesse Waters, because some of those things you just heard him say about the Palestinian people in Gaza, those are some of the same things I heard people say about Black people here in the United States. So I want you to think about that when you see this asshole up on the screen who has to wear like pounds of makeup. That's the first one. Then we go to CNN. Like I said, both of them. CNN also not with it on this issue. Listen to this. Now, all of a sudden, Abby Phillips is going to pretend like she cares about what happens to the Palestinian people. But when Biden and Kamala were in office, she didn't give a damn what was happening to those Palestinian people. In fact, she was just like, well, give Kamala a chance and let her negotiate and and figure this out. I told you guys, I predicted this would happen, that once Donald Trump won, that CNN and MSNBC would all of a sudden pretend to care about the Palestinian people. Listen to this.
They've been debating internally, according to my sources,
recognizing as the United States of America, the renaming of the West Bank to Judea and Samaria. There's a bill about that.
Annexation.
That's what they're talking about. It's not exactly annexation.
You know what? Let me
just
actually
erasing the name of the West
Bank. Let me go ahead and play this, because this is the man that Trump has chosen as the ambassador to Israel, and everything that we're talking about here was telegraphed by him. And this is in 2008 and in 2017. Listen to this.
Basically, I mean, there really is no such thing as, and I have to be careful in saying this because people will really get upset, there's really no such thing as a Palestinian.
So that's Mike Huckabee, and he's saying in this video there's no such thing as a Palestinian. He's I believe he's an evangelist, right? Like Mike Huckabee is all the way over. He crazy as hell. But I want to show you something. I want to point something out, because it's not just Mike Huckabee.
There's not.
My feeling personally, and I'm speaking only as a person, I think Israel would only be acting on the property it already owns. I think Israel has title deed to Judea to use.
Okay, so
this is illegal.
So again, he believes there's no Palestine and that should all go to Israel. Again, he's like, he's a nutty, like he's nutty as hell. But one thing that I noticed is that they never pointed these comments out when Richie Torres said similar things. Abby Martin never played a video about that. Richie Torres, Democrat, also crazed Zionist. But she would never play it because, again, he's a Democrat. So do you see how these networks, what they do? But don't worry. That's why you got some of us here for independent media. Listen to the rest of this.
This is illegal. This is what he just said, that is a violation of every international law. It's a violation of every convention that the United States, by the way, was part of. It's a violation of
human decency,
but also every UN resolution. It's a violation of International Court of Justice and International Criminal Court resolutions. What they are saying.
Abby Phillips. Yes, sorry. I keep saying Abby Martin, Abby Phillips. Thank you, Arthur.
Tonight, to the world and to the international community, international law is dead. It's
Scott,
dead.
Is international law dead? Because I think Rula is right in suggesting that that's basically what Trump is suggesting. Forcibly removing Palestinians from their land is against international law.
Yeah, but a lot of things that happened under Kamala and Biden were also against international law, but y'all didn't give a damn then. The same thing with the West Bank. Taking those homes from Palestinians in the West Bank is also against international law. Israel starving people in Gaza and not allowing food and aid to come in was also against international law. But you guys didn't have a problem with any of these things when it was happening under Biden and Kamala. Now you have a problem because it's happening under Donald Trump. So that's the first criticism. The second one was going to come to him.
I think we're being a little dramatic and we're on our jump to conclusions, Matt, here a little bit. He muses occasionally.
Taking him at his word.
He muses occasionally.
Look,
and
just to be clear,
it's
because you're suggesting that we are making this up or
no, I'm not suggesting anything.
It.
No, you're putting words in my mouth.
Well,
I'm saying you and I both know he muses occasionally and he's aspirational and he says provocative things
Scott,
occasionally.
I really don't want to interrupt you, but I just my own, I think I have to come to my own defense here in saying Donald Trump, with his own words, said this is what he wants to do. He wasn't musing. He was looking down at a piece of paper. I've been in a room with him, just like that, with foreign leaders, looking down at a piece of paper. He is reading a statement that was prepared for him. Those are not musings.
Well, Scott, what happened to America First?
So I
this
think
is the guy who was supposed to take us out of the endless wars, said he's against nation building. He railed against I am.
I know. playing the role of Catherine tonight.
I do want Scott.
Are you for the ethnic cleansing or against it?
I don't know that I agree with the term.
Okay, so let me pause here. I have to refresh this because it's sorry about that. Sometimes it does that. Let me go back to where I was.
But I just, my own,
out of the endless wars, said he's against nation building. He railed against I am.
I know. Playing the role of Catherine tonight. Brad.
I do want Scott.
Are you for the ethnic cleansing
I do
or
want
against
Scott
it?
to finish his point.
Look, I don't
You're
know
not for it?
I don't
You're
know
not
that I
against
agree
it?
with the terminology you're
Go
using.
ahead.
Here's what I think. It's provocative. It's an interesting conversation point. Donald Trump, he's the only person in the world speaking positively about this particular geography right now. And I will just say that
That's called
in the
Gaza.
first term, he did something rather audacious with the Abraham Accords, highly successful. He's always thought positively and aspirationally about the Middle East. And I would just ask all of you all who are enraged about this, how's it going right now? How's the current management doing?
Not
really all that well.
To answer you, and that's
Terrible.
because of Americans' weapons and American inability to enforce.
So look at the look on Scott's face when she mentions America's weapons, right? And America's inability. So she's getting into this here, right? So Scott's going to push back and say, well, I don't have anything. Don't blame America for this, but you have to blame America. Where do you think the weapons come from? But he's like, oh, I don't want to take any part in this. This is all Hamas's fault, but it's not. But she's going to school him. So listen to this part.
You're blaming us for the management problems in Gaza? Come on.
Wasn't doing a great job before.
Okay, let's be honest. We have a 58-year-old occupation that is illegal, that decimated people's hopes and lives. And
Pause. Look at the look on his face, the expression on his face when she said occupation. This is the part that people don't want to hear. This is the part that people don't want you to mention. They just want to start with October 7th, but they don't want to get to the why October 7th happened in the first damn place. They don't want to talk about the occupation. They don't want to talk about the oppression. They just want to start with everything happened on October 7th, and that's how we got here. No, that's not how you got there. Because the same criticism that you can make towards Hamas, and yes, Hamas did kill people on October 7th, and we do acknowledge that. The same criticism that you can give to them for October 7th, you need to give that same criticism towards Israel in 1948. Or any time that Israel went into Gaza and mowed the lawn before October 7th. Or when Israel shot at the feet of Palestinian protesters when they were peacefully protesting against apartheid. So this is the game, folks. Scott is there to make sure that he sticks to what his party, is supposed to believe. Even some conservatives I know got a problem with this situation. But he's there to say, oh, I'm just going to stick to that and just blame everything on Hamas and pretend like Israel has done nothing wrong. That's the role of Scott. Even though he is a contributor there on CNN, that is his role. Abby Martin's role, even though it's her panel show or whatever, is to basically pretend like the Democratic Party did everything that they could do and that all the blame should go on the Republican Party. When we know the genocide started under Biden and Kamala, and she didn't want to hold them accountable. So these people have roles and they're paid to play a role. But she sets him straight. This is her name is Rula. She's a Palestinian foreign policy commentator.
I'm the only Palestinian here, and I must say that it honestly, the fact that we are not able to put in perspective the history of that region. Before October 7th, hundreds of people were killed. After October 7th, still thousands and thousands of people are getting killed.
And what happened on that day?
For 58 years.
What happened on that day?
You know what? What happened on that day, actually, Secret Service of Israel had been predicted what happened on that day. What happened on that day is we had basically, a border that was, breached because we have a government in Israel, and as I am an Israeli-Palestinian government, we had a government in Israel that favored annexation and pogroms in the West Bank.
I'm just asking you what happened that day.
I want to tell you something. We had a government, we had the prime minister who said Hamas is an asset. We need to finance Hamas. He's the one that sent to Doha the head of the Secret Service 3 weeks before October 7th to ask the Qataris to finance Hamas.
But you don't want to say what happened. You don't want to say what happened that day.
It's not true.
So this is this is the game. This is the talking point. Let's just go back to what happened on that day. I don't want to hear anything else that you have to say. Let's just go back to that. That's what Scott is paid to do. Look at the pin on his suit jacket. Donald Trump let the quiet part out in the open. Donald Trump let you know it's really over 500,000 that have been killed. Meanwhile, under Biden and Kamala, they've been lying to you all this time about these numbers. I told you. But he wants you to go back to what happened on October 7th. 500,000 people versus 1,200, which, by the way, even Israel's own ministry came forward and admitted that they killed some of their own people on October 7th.
Atrocity that happened that day.
Yeah,
but
and
that
where did it emanate?
That atrocity is it doesn't justify the atrocities and the war crimes and the genocidal campaign that happened after.
I totally reject everything you just said about genocide, war crimes.
But the International
Israel has every
Criminal
right
Court
to defend
does
itself.
not.
I don't want us to get
not by committing war crimes.
I don't want us to get off course because I think that it is easy to redirect this conversation about October 7th when what we're talking about right now is what happens today and tomorrow and what comes next. And I want to ask you just a follow-up to what you said. Hold on. A follow-up to what you said. Trump is talking positively about the region, but in his view of Gaza, the Palestinians do not exist. How is that something that is positive for Palestinians? 2 million people that live there right now.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't give a lot of detail.
There are not 2 million people who live there right now. These are the people, guys, these are the people that are on corporate media. These are the people on the mainstream news. Just lie after lie after lie. There are not 2 million Palestinians in Gaza right now. There were 2 million prior to October 7th. Why is she telling this lie? Did she do, you think Abby Phillips, by the way, I think I said Abby Martin before earlier as well. Do you think Abby Phillips does any research about these topics before she shows up to work? Or do you think she just show up and she sit down and they put stuff in front of her and say, read this? Because as someone who majored in broadcast journalism, I'll tell you it's the latter. Just pulling numbers out of nowhere. No research.
About how he envisions the future for that population, and I certainly am not in a position to flesh it out either, because I don't know what he means by that. Here's what I do know. Current management failing, a president of the United States who's speaking positively about what could be happening in that region, and you all talk about the Middle East being on fire, and nobody seems to want to acknowledge on whose watch it was set ablaze. And so I think sometimes he calls these things out, and it's to start a conversation and we'll see where it goes.
Displacing millions of people.
Sending U.S. troops.
I think it's also
to the Gaza
necessary,
Strip
and I said this earlier, but the fact that we still have hostages, the fact that we still have hostages that aren't brought back yet, the fact that seems to be somewhat of an overlooked portion of this.
This clown here to the right named Bakari Sellers, by the way, he's also a Zionist. He also sold out to AIPAC. You guys need to know these things when you see them on these shows so that you understand why they have the talking points that they have. Bakari Sellers is known as Bakari Sellout because that's exactly what he did. He's like, oh, let's talk about the hostages that they still have, the Israeli hostages. When you're talking about Israel has way more Palestinian hostages. We're talking about children that have been abused in the detention centers. You're talking about people that have been sexually assaulted by Israel, which has been publicly displayed. And Bakari Sellers comes in and says, well, you know, there's still those hostages there because that's what he is paid to say. Everyone needs to know this. He's a sellout.
We have a deal, not a great one, but a deal.
Not only that, I'm interested to see, and there are people smarter than me about this, but what effect does this have on any ceasefire deal? What effect does it?
There's no ceasefire.
He suggested that it might actually affect it, and he.
So that's my point. I mean, if there are people who have, you know, the innocent men, women, and children of Palestinian babies and innocent women and children in their heart and minds at the forefront, then they want a ceasefire. We want a ceasefire. If there are individuals who want the hostages brought home, then they want a ceasefire so those hostages can be brought home. Today makes no sense in actually moving that ball down the field.
And what about the American families who don't want their loved ones who serve in our service to go fight another war overseas in the Middle East that he has no clear vision for? But he talked about U.S. boots on the ground. That's a slap in the face to MAGA voters who specifically rejected the old neoconservative ideology.
Not only that,
he sounds like Liz Cheney.
But not only that, you have the...
So he says Trump sounds like Liz Cheney. So now all of a sudden Liz Cheney is a problem again? But you had no problem with Liz Cheney when she was a part of Kamala Harris's campaign and they were going across the country on the campaign trail. Now all of a sudden you got a problem with Liz Cheney again. These people are cartoon characters. They're cartoon characters. We're living in a cartoon. Like, I don't know how a lot of these people look, how they look themselves in the mirror. Like, how do they do that? How do they deal with themselves? Like when they leave the studio, when they go home, how do they do that? How do they deal with that? How do you look yourself in the face in the morning? How do you look yourself in the face in the mirror, spewing these lies?
Exactly what Russia and China have been saying. It's all about the land. And basically, nobody watched what the Chinese said tonight. They said, we know exactly what they want, the Americans. Gaza, outside the Gaza shores, they discovered oil and gas. So it's not only
this isn't a new concept. I mean, in March.
One second. It's about colonialism. Donald Trump today, he proposed a new vision for America, and it's colonialism. And he's been proposing this for other areas, Panama and other places. But tonight he went further. He said, Palestinians, we will send them, left and right, whatever. And Palestinians, by the way, the millions of Palestinians, they have families in the West Bank. They have families in Jerusalem. I have families in Gaza, and my family lives both in Haifa, in Jaffa, and in the West Bank. We can move them there. Why not allow the women and children to move actually to where they have relatives? Why not allow the orphans? There's 38,000 orphans in Gaza. We have orphanage that are empty in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in Ramallah, in Jenin, and elsewhere. But you see that the vision is actually bypassing the Palestinians and ethnically cleansing them.
I reject one portion of your statement, which is to say that there was a new vision of colonialism for the United States of America. That I think that's as old as the United States of America. That's not necessarily a new vision.
I think the point that she's making is right.
No, but I'm also
just Trump is doing right now that is about grabbing land. Yeah. There's no question about it.
No question. But I mean, this isn't a new concept.
Buying Greenland versus invading Gaza is two very different things.
Ethnic cleansing versus anything else is different. But colonialism is not something that's new to the United States.
Sure, it's not new.
And that's my only point. But also, can we just point out the fact that like Donald Trump is probably the most honest broker we've had in American politics in recent history. Because nothing that he's saying, nothing that he's doing is not something that he didn't tell us he was going to do.
So the point that I want to bring across is this. It's just really sad, like when you look at these pundits, because the reality is this. It's interesting that now you guys can sit there and admit that this is about a land grab. But when many of us have been saying that even prior to October 7th, we were called, we were smeared. We were called anti-Israel. Some people were called anti-Semitic. These people have known all along that Israel wants that land. It's not just about the Donald Trump thing. They have known a long time Israel wants the land. Bakari Sellers, you are in bed with AIPAC. You know what they want. You know they want the land. And all these people get together and they sit around this table and they're like, oh, let's just sit here and talk about this. And let's just go back and forth around this table and da-da-da-da-da. And who knows how much they get paid, but they're getting paid a lot more than you guys to sit there and just tell lies. You had a Palestinian woman right there at the table. And what killed me is that all the other people who are not Palestinian are going to try to tell her about what's happening to her people. Then you have Jesse Waters here talking about these Palestinians are having too many babies. I thought you're supposed to be pro-life. These people, they're caricatures. Like, seriously, I can't understand this. I can't understand this. These people are paid puppets. This man has on more makeup than me. They get dressed up. They put makeup on them. They put them in front of the TV to dumb you down. It's sick. It's gross. It's disgusting. And everybody needs to push back on it. These people are not commentators. These people are actors. And everyone needs to start calling them that. Stop calling them journalists. They don't do no damn journalism. Stop calling them commentators. They are actors. They are paid actors. That's what they are. And they have been playing a role in front of you for the longest time. Don't nobody need that much damn makeup. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.